Today we're going to be covering everything you need in order to join in with the broad bean grow along that we're doing over winter. This is going to start right at the end of October, or more likely right at the beginning of November. First thing that you're going to require is the seeds. So we're using a variety from Real Seeds called Aquadulce longpod. The other variety that you could use from them, which isn't a broad bean but grows in a very similar manner and you can follow all the information for, would actually be their field beans Vespa. Both of these are hardy varieties, and that is really the only thing that we need to worry about here, is that you do make sure that they are something that are going to stand over the winter period. So any Aquadulce, so there's Aquadulce Super and Claudia are some of the other varieties, or any other broad bean that is marketed as hardy should be absolutely fine and do the job. When it comes to field beans, Vespa is the only one I've tried. Most field beans are actually used as a cover crop and may not be suitable for eating, so you do want to make sure that you get ones that are going to be suitable at the end. One of the things that we are trying to avoid here is sowing them too early. The larger plants are going to struggle against the frost, and too much damage is actually done for them to recover. Hence why we're going to be sowing these right at the end of October into the middle of November. If you're up north, then you are going to be wanting to do this more so at the beginning of November rather than into the middle of November. I will aim to make sure that the sowing video is out by the 1st or 2nd of November to make sure that you've got all that information ready to join in. These are larger seeds, so we are going to want pot sizes that are a decent size and length. They'll be sown into these once and then pop straight into the garden. If you are going to be using a cell tray, then I would suggest ones that are that much deeper. I wouldn't go for any that are too shallow. And even for these, they really are a little bit on the small size, so the pots that we've just mentioned would be more beneficial for them. If you're going for soil blocks, then I find that the square soil blocks works absolutely fine for these, because the roots don't end up going round and round. They don't get pot bound because they air prune. You can find that you'll get away with the smaller blocks of the soil blocks like these rather than a really deep pot. The seeds are very tasty to rodents as well, so when you are thinking of where they're going to go after we have sown them, then it is going to be really helpful to have them either somewhere up high, somewhere that they can't climb up, so that might be the metal legs on certain tables or something like that, or that you need to cover them with some sort of boxing in order to make sure that they can't actually get to them. Broad beans have been grown in the UK for many years, and they actually do very well in our weather. And one thing that we will likely find with these is actually they can look worse after a frost before they start picking up again. So offering a bit of netting can just help them pull through that little bit better. On a really harsh winter, we may lose our crops, particularly if you're up north, and you may then want to wait until February or January to get these in. It doesn't need to be a fine mesh. Even a fruit and veg sort of a centimetre square mesh would be absolutely fine. Just anything to provide a bit of a microclimate. One thing that is really important though, if we are going to net them early on, is that these are pollinated by insects. So it's really important that as they start to flower, that net is no longer on. So do make sure that you make a note to remove that net, otherwise you're just not going to get any beans. This particular variety gets to around 3.5 foot tall, and I found it does very well at supporting each other and doesn't necessarily need any additional support. There are varieties that are shorter that won't require any support at all, and then there are varieties that are much taller that are likely to require quite a bit of support. Usually this will be done by stakes and then running some string throughout the bed in order to support them as they get that much taller. I've seen ones that are even like 5 or 6 foot tall, so they would definitely want some support. If you're on a more exposed site, then the shorter varieties are definitely more helpful, or even with the variety height that we are growing, if your site is very exposed, then you may require that little bit of support just to make sure that they don't snap. When it comes to how many you want to sow, one of the things I'm going to point out is that actually we are not going to be singly podding these, but we are going to be double podding these. For the field beans, I usually find that they're fine single podded, but then I eat them like I do the dried beans. So you may find that even them you want to double pod, but they are smaller, so you would tend to use them in a different way. With the broad beans, by the time we have double podded them, what you're going to find is all the hundreds of pods that you've sat there and podded is going to give you a small bowl of results. So the more space that you can give to these and the more plants that you can pop in, the more you're going to get at the end. But they are quite labour intensive. So if you just want to give them a go, then planting a metre square at first might be all you want to give space to. Spacing for these is around 15 centimetres apart. If you are doing rows, then they want to be about 25 centimetres between each row. I tend to do more the square foot gardening type approach or the raised bed type approach, where I will just stagger the planting and that gets more into the same space. So we will have a look at that when we plant them out, but you may want to work out how many you need to sow in order to make sure that you fill your bed beforehand. We will be sowing these under cover, however, they will not be staying under cover for very long, and it is really important that we don't do them in the house. They don't want the warmth that the house will offer, and that will give us far too leggy broad beans and weaker plants to start with. If you don't have a polytunnel or a greenhouse, then a clear plastic box that you can just pop over them at night may be absolutely fine, just to offer them that little bit of support for the few weeks before they go into the ground. There are very low maintenance plants once we do get them planted out. Other than the initial water, the rain should hopefully take care of it for us going through until spring. When it comes to pests, the main pests that you'll find with these are usually black flies. This is something that usually affects broad beans that are sown that little bit later in the spring for a late summer harvest, more than it does our overwintering varieties, and we will look at ways within the grow along of reducing any impact that they may have as well. So hopefully we will get ourselves lots of pods that we will be sat there tediously podding for hours to come. So I hope that you are wanting to join in with this. If you've got any questions, please do let me know. This is the last grow along of this year that will obviously take us into next year. Do let me know if you've got any ideas for grow alongs for next year, and please do like, share and comment on the videos to help us reach other gardeners as well. Thanks.